people.
No, I didn't say I was a fan of Hamas.
Your solution to Hamas coming into my people's territory, slaughtering 1,200 of us, raping us, murdering us, taking 1-year-old babies back to Gaza is to give them a state. That's your solution. Thank you, Mr. Enlightened European.
Test the claim.
So the United Nations, who I don't rate at all, the United Nations estimated in November that 50% of the buildings in Gaza had either been damaged or destroyed.
Yeah.
Yet the death toll, even by Hamas's inflated figures, is 30,000. If Israel had been indiscriminately bombing, you would have 1 million dead Palestinians if half the buildings had been bombed. There wasn't 1 million dead Palestinians because Israel placed millions of pre-recorded phone calls telling people to leave. They made 50,000 live phone calls telling people to get out of buildings. They dropped millions of leaflets from the sky. They created maps showing which areas that Israel were going to go into and telling the Palestinians to leave. They created humanitarian corridors so Palestinians could flee. And as they were fleeing, Hamas was shooting at them. Israel did all of this to reduce the civilian casualties. In contrast, Hamas fortified Gaza, built 500 kilometers of tunnels under Gaza, and placed their civilians in front of them. So Israel is trying to minimize civilian casualties. Hamas are trying to maximize. There is a 2-to-1 ratio of civilians to militants. That is comparable to almost every normative conflict around the world. Yet Israel is singled out by European virtue signalers in the West, saying it's appalling what Israel's doing. Give me another army that's gone to those lengths to minimize civilian casualties.
Look at the Assad.
Okay.
Assad's a Syrian.
So hang on. So the figures that you're quoting me are what? How many dead and how many?
2-to-1 ratio, 12,000 Hamas.
You're saying 12,000 Hamas are dead?
Yeah.
And 2-to-1 ratio, so you're saying there's been, what, 36,000 casualties?
That's the Hamas number, so that would make it a 2-to-1 ratio.
Okay, so we've got... Damn, sorry, it's getting cold.
That's okay.
Okay, 12,000 dead, 12,000 Hamas, you're saying?
So 12,000 Hamas fighters, almost 12,000.
So we've got 24,000 Palestinian civilians killed.
So the Palestinian Ministry of Health is saying around 35,000.
Okay,
killed.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that I accept your figures. Also, I'm not saying I know for sure they're wrong. They seem to me improbable, and one of the reasons they seem improbable is I don't know how anybody can know how many Hamas people you've killed, to be honest. I mean, particularly a defence service which didn't even see October the 7th coming, and now suddenly it's pinpoint on how many it's killed. But let's run with your figures modally.
They know who they're shooting at, Tony. A lot better than against Speaker's Corner.
I know you say that, but they didn't know that October the 7th, we could dig in. They didn't see 1,500 people coming across the border, but now they can stare into Gaza and they can know which 12,000 people they've killed.
Just because someone drops the ball
I find that difficult to...
Fine.
I mean, it's quite opaque.
Tony, you know what I'm saying? I don't care. I genuinely don't care that you don't.
And I've said, when people are voting this year, I'm thinking most of us will vote for people we do care.
Yeah.
Okay? So
that's fine. I'm not running in any election. I'm an Orthodox Jew who's worried about my family.
I know, and I'm worried about your family as well. It's just I think the best way for you to worry about your family is to also be worrying about other people's families.
You think the best way for me to worry about my family is to side with those that genocide my people?
No, I didn't say I was a fan of Hamas.
Your solution to Hamas coming into my people's territory, slaughtering 1,200 of us, raping us, murdering us, taking 1-year-old babies back to Gaza is to give them a state. That's your solution. Thank you, Mr. Enlightened European.
That wasn't my direct solution to that. I've always been in favour of a two-state solution. Okay.
Yes, but your solution
for the first time, what I'm noticing, disturbingly on the marches, if Joseph would just,
sorry, I haven't got a camera man, so I've got to.
If you pull back on I'm not anti-Semitic. Okay? I'm really not. All right.
I think you said
the reason I raised the marches was for 3 decades I've gone on the marches. And I've always marched for a two-state solution. Most of the people with me, I got the impression, were marching for a two-state solution. Let me finish. You'll like this point. What I'm noticing from going on the marches recently is that there's far more of a shift to a one-state solution. I find that disturbing. Okay? I don't think a one-state solution can work, because if it's an Israeli-dominated, the Arabs will get a terrible time. If it's Arab-dominated, the Israelis will get a terrible time. So I'm finding that shift in the marching pattern to be disturbing
Even that's
and
not true.
polarizing again.
Even that's not true. There are 2 million Arabs in Israel who have complete equality with Jews. Salim
Yeah, I'm
Gibran
talking-
has sent a Jewish prime minister to jail, an Arab judge. An Arab judge has sent a Jewish president to jail.
Yeah.
In contrast, there are no Jewish Palestinians. The Arabs in Israel have complete equality. What you say is not truth. What you say is opinion, and it's opinion born out of ignorance.
No, I cannot believe that right now, if you take the 9 million people who
No,
are...
there's not 9 million
if you-
Arabs. You keep saying that. There's not.
Okay, what's the figure you're happy
So
with?
you have 4 million. You have around 4 million in the West Bank and 2 million in Gaza.
Okay, what do you want?
And
6 million?
I don't believe 4 million is
Okay.
accurate. I think the numbers are inflated by the Palestinian Authority.
Give me
for
the
any
figures
reason.
you're willing to work with. What figures are you
I
willing
would
to
say,
work with?
for simplicity, I say between 4 and 6 million.
Okay, so let's cut the slack. And we've got 5 million Arabs who are not Israeli Arabs. I think if you put them into the one society with the current Israelis, it's going to be hell for whoever is the minority, okay? That's what I think. And I don't want hell. So I don't want a one-state
How is it hell
solution.
for the Arabs in Israel today? Explain me that. How is it
Before
hell?
we go there, let's see if we can agree on the basic idea that if you take all of the
I
people
disagree. I'm
involved...
saying I disagree with you.
What do you disagree? What's the statement you're disagreeing with?
I'm disagreeing with you that if you put the Arabs into Israel, the Jews would make it hell for the Arabs. That's what I'm disagreeing
Okay, you think, hang on, sorry. The Palestinian people right now, if they were integrated into one state with the Israelis, you think it would be, the Israelis would, they wouldn't have any animosity towards them, they wouldn't have any feelings of revenge, you think they'd all just get on great suddenly? Really? You believe
I
that?
believe Israel is a liberal democracy which affords equality to all of its citizens.
Okay, I think, look, the viewers can decide on this one. I think right now, if you take those group of people of, say,
So why are they not doing
let
that
me
to the
finish.
Arabs in Israel?
If you take those 15 million people roughly right now, and you put them all into one society together, I think they'll kill each other. Because I think it is so heightened right now. Everybody's so tense. There's so much conflict. They need a bit of breathing space.
why
So a
is this-
one-state solution
why is
right now is
Israel-
an insane
Why
idea.
is Israel not doing that to the Arabs in Israel today? There are
Because
Palestinian flags
they've
waved-
successfully
No,
integrated
I mean,
them.
you go to certain cities in the north and they wave Palestinian flags.
I
They have this Palestinian identity, the Arabs, rather than Israeli identity.
I was
Yet they have
agreeing with
complete
you, not
equality
arguing with
the
you. I
Jews.
understand that 2 million Arabs have been successfully assimilated into
No,
Israel.
I'm saying they're not assimilated. That's what I'm saying.
They're Israeli citizens, they get a vote, etc., yeah.
There are Arabs that identify as Israeli Arabs, and there are Arabs who identify as Palestinian Arabs that live within Israel.
Sure.
The ones that identify as Israeli Arabs, you could say, have successfully been integrated and assimilated because they see themselves as no
And they get a
different than
vote within the democracy,
But both
yes?
of them get the vote in the democracy. The Palestinians and the Israeli Arabs, like the Arabs, if they're an Israeli citizen, they get complete equality.
Sorry, my mind is blown. So are you telling me that Palestinian Arabs get to vote as to who runs the state of Israel?
No. An Arab who lives in Israel,
Yeah.
who has an Israeli passport,
Gets to vote in the
yes,
state of Israel.
and some of them consider themselves Israeli Arabs, but some of them see themselves as Palestinian.
Okay.
And so
I'm-
I've debated people in this park who come from Israel, Arabs, and they see themselves as
I
Palestinian,
get
not
it,
Israeli.
but just in case I've just
And I'm
jumped
saying
the shark
that-
here,
I'm saying
we
that-
are clear that the Palestinian people do not get to vote in
No,
the
they
Israeli
vote in
election.
the Palestinian
Good, so
Authority
they are
elections,
disenfranchised
if
from
they ever
that.
run them.
So
Well,
they're
they're not disenfranchised, it's a different territory.
Okay.
Why would they vote for a
Because
territory?
it is currently 2 states. That's my
It's
point.
not
but if
two
it's,
states. According to you, it's 2 states.
it's two.
According to no one
It's
there,
currently 2 territories.
I'll just take my comments.
Okay, it's currently 2 territories. Yes, call it 2 state, call it 2 territories. It is not one state. It is not one integrated state. Anyway, I don't think a one-state solution can work right now because everyone's too angry. Is that a controversial assertion?
It's not controversial, so
Thank
we can
you.
move on.
Good,
we can
good.
move on.
Thank you.
But I'm saying I disagree with you, and that's fine.
Okay.
I'm saying
I
think
would like to
Israel
see
would-
a long-term 2-state solution, but right now,
But
one-state
you
solution
never
would be
answered
crazy.
my question. Give
Which
me another
was?
example of a military that's gone to the lengths that Israel's gone to minimize civilian
Oh
casualties.
God! Look, I'm not an expert in military conflict, but I'm looking at it like this. You got, by your count, even if your figures are right, you've killed 12,000 Hamas. Let's assume that you're right on that for a minute, and I think it's dubious, but whatever. So you've killed 24,000 civilians in 4 months.
But we haven't. The reason they are dead is because Hamas.
All
has
I said
put them
was,
between. Yeah.
you've killed 24. Okay, I overjumped them up. There are 24,000 dead civilians. Yes.
Yes. Which is tragic, but every single
Okay.
one of them is on Hamas.
How did this happen? Now,
You know how it
What I hear from Israel is that you are leafleting and forewarning them where you're going to drop bombs.
Yes.
Yes, and I hear this, and I believe that's true. However, I suspect as a layman, you guys think it through, that's not the whole truth. I suspect that you're doing two types of attacks. You're doing ones where you tell them you're going to bomb in advance. Thank you. That's cool. Well, I'd say thank you, but you know what I mean.
So why is the
It's
civilian death toll so low?
let me finish. So you're doing. Hang on. No, let me finish. No. Let me.
You
finish.
can jump in next. You can
I'm sorry. I know you've been there for ages, but this is a point I've been wanting to make for ages. Okay. Let me please
land your point.
Please let me land the point. Okay. I suspect as a layman, Israel is pulling three sleight of hand. The first is they're saying that they are forewarning the Palestinians when they're going to bomb a building. And I think they're doing that, but I think they're also doing a bunch of preemptive attacks where they're not warning. So the question I want to know is, of the attacks you're doing, how many are preemptive where you don't give a warning? How many do you give a warning? And what's the relative body count from each? And my guess is that of the 24,000 dead civilians you've got, most of them come from attacks which are preemptive where there's no forewarning. Because realistically to me, if you tell me that you're going to blow up my house tomorrow, guess what? I'll get the hell out. If I'm a member of Hamas, I'll get the hell out. I'm not going to stand in that building and go, hey, blow me up. And similarly, I'm not, hang on, wait, also, I'm not going to get a bunch of civilians and herd them into that building at gunpoint and go, you have to get blown up.
I actually have the answer for you, Tony.
Go ahead, thank you.
So it's very, very simple.
Good.
Depending on the target and the context will determine whether there's a warning or not. So if you have a high value target in a building, let's say a prominent commander in Hamas, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, Israel will strike that building, depending who the person is. So Israel, proportionality in war is not based on the number. People in the West have no idea about the laws of war. Proportionality.
I'm sorry, you can't just dismiss our feelings on this just by going, people in the West have no idea about proportionality.
No, people have opinions on proportionality.
I know, we're allowed to have those opinions, and some of them, well, we'll come back to that. Go on. This issue of proportionality is run very deep.
When we're talking about the Geneva Conventions and the rules of engagement and how wars are conducted, proportionality is to do with what is the military objective, and then making a call on the impact the civilian.
Do you mind if, let's come back to proportionality in a minute. Just to come to the. Sorry, I raised it, and it was my fault. I digressed us. I want to do proportionality in a minute.
Okay,
but to come back to my question of body count.
So the body count.
Yeah.
So you have a problem with your logic, with your argument, with your position. And the problem is this. You believe that Israel, the language you use is indiscriminately bombing.
I didn't use that language.
You did. It's on camera. You said you believe they're being indiscriminate.
Okay, maybe I did.
Broadly,
I would have picked a better word, but it broadly sums up how disproportionate. I think it's disproportionate.
You definitely used.
I think it's disproportionate. I prefer disproportionate.
And so the challenge you have, the problem you have, is the level of bombs that have been dropped on Gaza is considerable. They've dropped tonnage of bombs is a lot, yet proportionately the death toll is very low. It sounds crazy because there's a lot of people being killed and that's a tragedy, but the reason they've been killed is not because Israel is looking to kill civilians.
I never said they were.
I'm not saying you did. The reason they've been killed is because Hamas is engaging Israel from civilian neighborhoods. So when there are civilians that have been killed, that's one of two reasons. Hamas are either engaging Israel from those positions, or there's a high value target which Israel needs to take out. They're the two key reasons for what happens. So yes, you're right. I would imagine the higher volume of people that have been killed from the figure we're talking are those that are falling into those conditions and not the buildings that are the neighborhoods that have been emptied.
Joseph, listen, thank you for that, because if we can agree on that, I haven't heard anybody in the media discussing at this level of depth. I think we're heading to me what is an important point now, which is how many of the civilian deaths are due to these preemptive attacks. And I think we're nudging into the area where you're going,
what do you mean by preemptive attacks?
The ones where you don't forewarn, the ones where you don't, where the civilians can't clear out because they're seen to be in an area where there's a Hamas target. So Israel preemptively drops a bomb to kill the Hamas targets and does collateral damage to civilians,
Yeah.
So the question I want to know, and we all should know by now 4 months into this, is what percentage of the civilian casualties are because of those preemptive strikes? My guess is most of them.
Yeah.
Okay? If we can also agree that that's the facts on the ground, then I've got to weigh the equation. Do I think that killing that numbers of civilians, let's assume 20,000 of them were killed preemptively, according to your figures. So you've got 12,000
I
Hamas.
would use the word preemptive, but fine.
Well, I need a word which describes the counterposition to when you're giving a warning. Yeah. So preemptive are non-warned attacks. So of the non-warned attacks, which I'll call preemptive, using your figures, if they've killed 12,000 Hamas, they've still killed, say, 20,000 civilians. Now, finally, we have an equation that we can morally weigh and go, do we think that killing 20,000 civilians in order to kill 12,000 Hamas is a proportional response? Do we think that Israel is using as much diligence as it could reasonably expect it to? And my current reading is no.
And so
I don't think
I'm going to interrupt you here, and I'm going to put your challenge. So you've got to do two things to make that statement. You have to compare it to other historical conflicts to see what the precedent is. Yeah. And then you've got to look at the measures that Israel's taking, given that they're engaging with a military which is hiding behind civilians and trying to maximize civilian casualties on their side and our side. So you have to go to history, otherwise you're just making.
I think everything you just said is a reasonable way to weigh the argument, which will make it more complex again. But my
mic's died, so I'm going to have to wrap it up here so I can charge them again. We can continue talking, but I'm going to charge my mics. My challenge to you is the next time we talk, we've done that. Look at a historical conflict. And if you do that, maybe I'm not going to be as quick to call you an anti-Semite, because I don't think you would be applying this standard to any other military conflict in the world. You're not doing it to Yemen. You're not doing it.
Well, I'm not up on Yemen.
That's my point. I
can't be up.
You're not up. No, you're up on this one because of anti-Semitism. Not necessarily your anti-Semitism, but because the world is anti-Semitic.
Okay, but I'm not. Okay,
I'm saying you have these positions because of that. You've heard this conflict over all of the other ones because of anti-Semitism. You have the opinion you have because you've heard millions and millions of stories, and only a small number of
I'm
you're brainwashed like everyone else.
I'm brainwashed. Any chance you're brainwashed?
Less so than you.
Because
I'm exposed to both narratives.
You honestly think I'm not trying to look at it from both sides?
No, I think
really
you're trying to, but I think you haven't. Okay. And that's why I think a lot of what I'm saying you've never heard before.
I genuinely try and care, in so much as I can care about people I don't know and so on. I genuinely try and care I have an interest in the interests of the people of Palestine and the Israelis. I'd like to feel that you had a bit more empathy for the people of Palestine.
So this is where you've got no idea. I've just come from a rally where no one else brought, a Palestinian speaker and put him on in a Jewish rally. We brought an Arab from the UAE, a Saudi, to speak for peace.
Yeah.
You have no idea what my positions are.
Okay, then I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, show me I'd like to know, when you say, quote, I don't care, I
don't care about you. I care about Palestinians. Fine. I care about Israelis.
You do care about Palestinians.
I care about you in the context of I want you to live a nice, worry-free life in the UK.
Do care about Palestinians.
You
do care about Palestinians.
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
What I would say is...
Well, if you keep saying I don't care, I inferred from that you didn't particularly care. You said I care about my family and looking after my people.
I'm going to throw some stats at you, which you will never heard. What percentage of Palestinians do you think supported... Let's go with the moderates in the West Bank. Yeah. What percent of the moderates in the West Bank, Palestinians, do you think supported what happened on October 7th? Throw a number out there.
Oh, well, I heard that 60% elected Hamas, and I've heard that since then it may be an equivalent figure I've heard, but I don't know what the source is on that.
82% of the moderates in the West Bank, the moderates, support what Hamas did.
Who decides what a moderate is? Isn't it
just... I was throwing that word in because that's what the West says. The West says that the moderates are in the West Bank and Gaza is extreme.
So actually that comes down to, in the West Bank, 82%
of Palestinians support what Hamas did. The murder and rape of children.
Okay, hang on. It doesn't follow that because...
I mean, that's what October 7th was.
Okay, Finkelstein, for example. You know Finkelstein?
Of course I know. He refused to debate me, right?
Okay, I don't know how true... I don't know how true that may or may not be, anyway.
He refused to debate me. Because Bella did debate me in Iran.
I'm looking for... Finkelstein has already conceded that atrocities occurred on October the 7th. Okay?
What atrocities... Oh, you mean that Hamas had committed atrocities?
Your instinct to instantly assume I'm not...
You said other, which was what confused me. Okay, because you said other atrocities happened, and I didn't know what you meant by other.
No, arguing on your side
sorry, I
here and
misunderstood
going.
what you're saying.
So one of your strongest critics has conceded that atrocity. Joseph has put forward the following figures, which for the sake of argument I won't dispute, which is that Israel has killed 12,000 Hamas fighters and there have been 24,000 civilians.
I haven't made any claim on the civilians. Civilians have come from Hamas's Ministry of Defense, so taking their numbers is where you'd get
Well,
to.
you did make a claim on civilians because you gave me a ratio, and you can't give me a ratio
so
unless you give me a civilian
I'm saying,
figure.
so with Hamas's inflated ratio, which I believe is inflated, you get to a 2
Just
to
give
1
me the
ratio.
figures that you
We don't
personally.
have. We don't have.
Joseph, if you're going to tell me that it's an acceptable ratio, you must have figures that you accept.
Okay,
Give me your figures.
Hear what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't believe Hamas's numbers, but if they were true,
Yep.
it would be a 2 to 1 ratio.
Great. Okay. So what we're saying is, you're saying if Hamas's numbers were true, and I'm saying if your claim of 12,000 was true,
Yeah.
we would have a ratio of 2 to 1.
Yeah. Sorry.
The question then is a 2 to 1 civilian to combatant ratio a reasonable one within the history of the Geneva Convention, etc.? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, fine. That's where we're at.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I think I would be stunned if you killed 12,000 Hamas fighters, but I'll run with that figure for a minute.
why would you be stunned when you have so little knowledge of all of this?
Precisely because you have so little knowledge as well. Because
But I have a lot more than you.
no, actually, I think your ability to understand.
Oh my goodness!
What's
I've just read off.
No, wait, you do about a lot of things, but I think your ability to see what's happening inside Gaza as you bomb it and who's in buildings.
It's probably a little better than you because
it's
I have a
probably-
direct line to the IDF. I have a direct line to various ministries in the Israeli government. I've gone on tours there, so I probably have more of an insight than you.
I think that's an argument from an authority, and I don't know how
Well, we can only
accurately-
argue from authority here because it's to do with whose numbers are more
Yeah, but I
authoritative.
don't think the IDF I really can't believe that the IDF, who, as I said, let 1,500 people across the border in October, suddenly have a pinpoint sense of which Hamas members are sitting in which buildings they can't see inside.
they have
I
guidelines.
find that quite difficult to find consistent.
So yeah.
I mean,
maybe
you
you're
wouldn't.
maybe you're right. Maybe
mean-
they've got no idea.
No, I don't.
whatsoever.
No. I never said they
I
had
don't-
no.
they-
I never said they had no idea. I think they have some idea, but I think they've probably got
either
a
way,
pretty
maybe you
blurry
have
idea.
maybe you have a better idea. Than
No,
they do.
I think I have a blurry sense of it. My guess is their sense is blurry as well. And when I suddenly hear a figure like 12,000, I think that's a really high figure. And I don't think you really know
So
what's going on in there.
given that they've conquered, they've taken most of Gaza. There's
Uh-huh.
only Rafah left.
Go on.
And there's been fighting continuously in those areas that they've taken.
Yeah.
Who do you think they were shooting? Whose bodies do you think they were looking at after they've taken them out?
Joseph, I can't even work out in my head, thinking it through logically, how do you tell the difference between a Palestinian male and a Hamas
Because
fighter?
one's holding an RPG.
A body, how do you tell a body lying on the ground of a 30-year-old man, how do you tell if he was a Hamas fighter or a Palestinian civilian? Seriously.
So I'm answering
How does
that.
a reasonable person do that?
I'm answering that.
Please.
So, in many ways, you're right, because Hamas dress in civilian clothes. So when they came into Israel, they were wearing military uniforms. Now that they're fighting amongst their own people, they hide in civilian clothes. So in partly right. But what happens is Israel is engaging fighters. So Israel isn't just shooting random Palestinians. They're shooting the Palestinians that are shooting RPGs at them. They're shooting the Palestinians that are shooting Kalashnikovs at them. They're shooting Palestinians that are firing drones at them. That's who they're shooting. So they know who it is they're fighting. They're not fighting shadows. They're not fighting ghosts. They shoot. The person dies. They see them go down.
You really think urban warfare is that transparent when people are shooting from behind windows? You're surrounded all over the place.
I don't
you can
doubt-
really tell who
No,
you're
I
particularly when you're bombing.
So-
but anyway, let alone
Tony,
shooting.
you're absolutely right. There were instances where Israel will have killed someone they thought was a fighter and they weren't. There's been instances, tragedies, where Israel's even killed its own hostages.
Yeah, we saw.
So of course, this is warfare.
The fog of war is
Yeah,
that. So when I hear
there's
a
no
figure,
argument.
So when I hear a figure like, oh, we know we've got
Yeah.
12,000, I think
Yeah,
fog of war, urban warfare.
Tony,
I can't believe
my
anybody
issue-
can be that accurate.
Tony, yeah, you took the Hamas numbers
No, I
without
didn't.
questioning.
No. I will question Hamas. I don't think Hamas are.
Then how can you say that it's too
I think
high?
I don't. I think we have to accept some working numbers. So I accepted your 12,000 as a working number, even though I'm highly
so this is
skeptical.
this is purely
I'm
theoretical
accepting-
then.
It gives us a mathematical model to
So
work
basically,
with.
so that's fine. So we're
Okay?
saying the
So
same
we
thing.
analyse that model, and then we're looking at the ethics within that model, even though the 12,000 and the Hamas
So
figure.
we're literally
may be
arguing for the sake of
disputable.
arguing.
No, we're not
We're
arguing
just
for the
saying the
sake of
same thing.
No, we're arguing what threshold of civilian to military casualties we ethically
And
consider
we're
to
saying
be
we accept
acceptable.
Israel, and we are
And you think
expecting
2 to 1,
Hamas,
2 to 1,
and
you're
you,
happy
and
with.
you're saying that Israel's probably inflated, and I'm saying Hamas is inflated, but we're basically saying the same thing. We're saying these are the numbers we've got to work with because that's all we've got. And I'm saying I have more faith in Israel's numbers than Hamas's, and you're saying you have more
I'm saying
faith
you
in
find a
Hamas's.
2 to 1 ratio acceptable.
Yes.
And I'm saying
And that's based on people like Colonel Richard Kemp, who is the leader of the forces in Iraq, who've come out, who was the other one, someone Johnson, I've forgotten his name, from America, military experts who talk about urban battles, who've literally led military campaigns.
okay, let's run an even deep hypothetical. So let's say I look at the history, I discover there is a 2 to 1 ratio. I accept that a 2 to 1 ratio is a reasonable one, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's assume that happened. If I checked all those facts and I ended up there, what proportion would you, at what point proportionally would you find unacceptable? What ratio to you would become unacceptable?
So I actually literally had this debate yesterday with Cenk Uygur. Do you know Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks?
Oh yeah.
So we were both asked what's
an unacceptable
number.
it's a good
and
question.
the British politician, I love him, Ivan Lewis, didn't give a number. Cenk Uygur didn't give a number. I gave a number.
Good. What was it?
So my number was the 2 to 1 ratio. If we're saying there are 30,000 Hamas fighters,
Yeah.
60,000 is tragedy, and I put every single one of those on Hamas. Like every one of those 60,000 is on Hamas.
So you can-
But 60,000 would be a number that I think
Okay.
military experts would say is acceptable.
Okay.
Therefore, that I would defer to their
Okay.
their
Fine. You found
very
2.
knowledge.
You think 2 to 1 is acceptable.
Yeah.
I'd need to look into the history, think about it, reflect. It's not impossible I might think something similar.
Yeah.
Okay? But the question I asked you wasn't that. The question was, what ratio would you consider unacceptable? Would 3 to 1
3 to
be
1.
acceptable?
So it would be unacceptable.
3 to 1 would be unacceptable.
2.1, not unacceptable. Maybe not 2.1, but you know what I'm saying.
Then logically, if 3 to 1 would be unacceptable, and it turned out that they'd only killed 8,000 Hamas fighters,
Yeah.
you would then concur that there had been a disproportionate amount of civilian damage. Yes?
Yes, if we're going with a 2 to 1 ratio. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very concrete mathematical assertion, and I
Now,
applaud.
obviously,
hang on.
can I just finish? Because I'm
Wait,
saying
I want to
it's obviously going to be fuzzy around the edges, but
you.
largely,
I want to
yes.
applaud you for planting a flag on that one, because now the ethical backbone of your argument really does predicate on that figure of 12,000. Because should it transpire that figure was only 8,000, you would have hit a ratio of 3 to 1, which you say, and you're happy.
So
If you want to retract or shift anything, fine.
I'm
but
just
you
going to
say
shift
3
slightly.
to 1
just
is
gonna say,
not acceptable.
When it comes to because you use the word proportional, when it comes
Yeah.
to proportionality in war, it's not based on a ratio. It's
That's
based
a
on the
big-
military objective and the calm.
That's the proportionality thing. I've got data on here from Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro, the head of the Daily Wire, Douglas Murray, precisely on this topic of proportionality I've been wanting to go into for ages, but we probably shouldn't do it
it's
right
too late
now,
now,
okay?
but
But
yeah.
I have data with quotes and fact checks, because this argument I'm hearing a lot and I want to dig in on. But I want to thank
But
you for the 3 to 1 is unacceptable, and it predicates on. So if there were only 8,000 Hamas killed, you would have a 3 to 1 ratio, which you would consider unacceptable.
Don't know if the unacceptable is the word I use. What the word? No, I'm just going to be very clear.
Okay, be clear. And it's okay. I think this is good. Okay, this is not a condemnation of you, your family, or the whole state of Israel, or any of that. I'm just trying to move forward through a logical, ethical argument. Okay.
So, well, I think the word, and it's every word I use doesn't do justice to the magnitude of what we're talking.
Okay.
So, like, if I was to say undesirable, that sounds callous and cold.
Okay.
Unacceptable seems like, but what happens if it does go over? And I look at what happened, and I think actually that was acceptable for whatever reason. So I think each thing has to be weighed on its merits. But as a general principle, I would say 2 to 1, keeping the ratio below 2. That's I think how I phrase it. Keeping a ratio below 2 to 1 is desirable. That's what we should be aiming for. That should be the objective. But I don't think you should wage a military campaign based on ratios. You should wage a military campaign based on military objectives, and they're trying to minimise civilian harm. And
well, that is the ratios. Minimizing
ratio is a number.
You minimize the harm. You express that minimization as a ratio.
Yes and no. Yes and no. So it's the old like Hitler. If you,
We're always two steps away from Hitler.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
No.
I'm cold.
It is cold. Listen, I thought at the end of this, we reached. This was good.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not anti-Semitic.
My thing is, I don't think you mean to be anti-Semitic, and I sincerely believe that you judge everyone on their merits. But I think you have absorbed through osmosis anti-Semitic positions that you're not even.
I can't discount that possibility, and as I say, equally, you can't discount the possibility that maybe, the elements of the Jewish community have become over paranoid about the degree of anti-Semitism that's out there. Maybe not, but it would be. I know you wouldn't, and you're not. But it would be tragic. It would be really, really tragic.
We are the most persecuted community in the UK.
I know, I get it. The history
we're basically invisible. You can't tell most Jews are Jewish.
The history is clearly terrible for the Jews. There is no question. They should survive. They should have a homeland and all of those things. Definitely no question. Okay. I'm not saying there isn't an appalling history of the Jews being used as scapegoats. All I'm suggesting is the probability that the Jewish community has accurately gauged the amount of anti-Semitism, pinpoint accurately, is actually quite low. Chances are they've underestimated it or overestimated it to some degree, and it's not impossible they've overestimated it to some degree, which is making the whole situation more difficult for them and other people as well.
I would say, this is the truth, I would say that we have a better measure of it than non-Jews. And I'll finish with, this is my closing comment, you can say whatever you want to say.
Go.
I was giving a talk to Holocaust survivors a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that was asked, and it wasn't put to me, it was put to a colleague of mine. This is a man who lost his entire family in Auschwitz, and he survived Auschwitz. He's an elderly man. He's written a book. I'm not going to name him for his.
Why not?
Just because I don't know if he'd like me to repeat what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, because it was sent to us in confidence, and I didn't want his name associated with it. But he looked at my colleague and said, "Look, I have to ask this. Mm-hmm. Is it time? Do we need to leave the UK now?" And so when you have someone who's been through Auschwitz asking that question, I am more likely to trust his judgment of the state of anti-Semitism in the UK than Tony's.
Okay. If you will, you will.
No, I will. I will trust a Holocaust survivor over you.
I meet very few very few people who will promote anti-Semitism.
I've literally had knives pulled on me.
I know, but that doesn't change. I know
you might not have. Why would you know who isn't anti-Semitic?
Well, I mean, I mix in the world as well.
Yes, but you don't mix as a Jew. And this is the thing. No one denies the racism that other communities are subject to.
But then
you downplay anti-Semitism.
Yeah, but when you're noticing when you notice someone who pulls a knife on you, what you don't notice is the 900 people who didn't pull a knife on you. And if you want to get a sense of the level of anti-Semitism, it's in that ratio. And I think you may be underestimating the number of people who don't pull knives on you because they don't want to do that.
In the Nazis in Nazi Germany and what that led to.
Look, clearly,
in most of the countries we've been chased out of, it wasn't the majority.
Sorry, I didn't give you the in. I'm sorry. I was really trying to make a point, and I'm shivering like crazy.
Anyway, let's wrap it up.
I'm happy to give you the last word because I thought that improved.
Yeah. Okay,
and we got a concrete output, which was good. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anyway.
Cheers, man. Take care. Is there any chance you can send me a copy of this one?
My camera died. I can send you what I've got, but Cyrus uploads everything. So.
Oh, has Cyrus got this?
Yeah, you've got his mic. Let me grab my one.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.